Olá, seja muito bem-vindo ao mini course in Brazilian Portuguese. Welcome to the mini course in Brazilian Portuguese. I am Adriele, one of your teachers in this whole week of classes of Portuguese language, and the other teacher is Ludmila. You will see her in other classes and the other days. But in this first class, I'm gonna present to you our course, how it's gonna work, what you may expect from that, and also I'm gonna explain and present to you our school, who we are. So be very welcome, and I really hope that we enjoy this whole week with us. Well, first thing, I want to introduce ourselves. That's what one of the things that you're gonna learn today. So I am Adriele, as I said. My name is Adriele. I'm Brazilian. I live in Brazil, and both of us, Ludmila too, live in Brazil, but lives in Brazil, but we live in different cities, in the same state, Minas Gerais, but in different cities. Well, I live in a city called Carangola, and Ludi lives in a city called Juiz de Fora. And we are apart about 240 kilometers. Well, I don't know about you, so that would be really nice if you could introduce yourself in the comment section that we have below the video. So, as I said, tell me your name, where you are from, the name of your country, where you are currently living, and what is the name of the city where you live. Well, you can try to do that in Portuguese, so I will say everything I said about myself again, about where I live in Portuguese, ok? So, olá, meu nome é Adriele, eu me chamo Adriele, e eu sou brasileira, eu moro no Brasil, a Ludmila também, mas a gente mora em cidades diferentes. A Ludmila, nós moramos no mesmo estado, Minas Gerais, mas a Ludmila mora numa cidade chamada Juiz de Fora e eu moro numa cidade chamada Carangola. Nós estamos longe uma da outra, numa distância de 240 quilômetros. Well, that's what I said in the beginning, so then I repeated it in Portuguese. I understand that most of you here today, as most of you answered our emails telling us about yourselves, and you also answered the research we sent by email, that you are beginners in the language. That's why this course will be all in English, but you will receive a lot of information in Portuguese, okay? So the explanations will be in English, so it will be more democratic, so more people will have access to it, will understand that. So English will be the language you're gonna be using in this course, okay? Well, I am married, eu sou casada, and I have a little daughter, 2 years old daughter called Emma. And eu tenho uma filha de 2 anos chamada Emma. And Ludmila is also married, but she doesn't have any kids yet. Ludi é casada também, mas ela não tem filhos ainda. Okay, so I just said to you our marital status, if you have kids or not. So if you want to try, introduce yourself, giving us more information about you, that's one thing. But we have our class about that, okay? About telling our ages, how old we are, what we do, our professions and occupations. So don't worry about that. It's just for us to break the ice. In Portuguese we say quebrar o gelo. I don't know if this works the same way in English, but it's when we start a conversation with a small talk just to open ourselves, okay? Well, guys, what is Yes Portuguese School? As I was saying, Ludi and I, we are friends, and we met while we were doing our master's and then our PhD degrees. We have a PhD in linguistics, and we studied together in Juiz de Fora, in the Federal University of Juiz de Fora. And then we did our PhD together, then in the same project with the same supervisor. And we both got a scholarship to spend some time of our PhD in Sweden. So Luigi went there in October 2016 and she stayed until April 2017. And I arrived in Sweden in the city of Gothenburg in January 2017, and I stayed until the end of January 2018. So it was an incredible experience. We got closer and closer because we were there living and studying together at the University of Gothenburg. And then we realized that how hard it is for foreigners to stay in a different country without knowing the language, and how difficult it is to connect with people, because in Sweden, although most of people speak English, and although we could also communicate in English, we couldn't speak Swedish. And since we didn't had much time to dedicate to the language, we didn't learn much. So it was difficult for us to actually communicate in a deeper level, to connect with people in a deeper level. So we used to be in a table with full of people, and they were like talking in Swedish. They were laughing, telling jokes, and then when we arrived and they had to switch to English, we knew that it was not so cool for them. You know, they were fine, they were kind, and they did that, but it was like we knew that if you knew Swedish, that would be much better. You know, they didn't have to translate. They wouldn't have to translate things for us, and you know, when people tell a joke and they have to translate the joke, it's not the same thing. We miss the time of the joke, right? That's why back then we decided that it would be nice if people around the world could learn some Portuguese. Because we imagine that for us Brazilians, it's so hard to learn English because it's expensive. It's not so easy to afford an English class. We have English class at school, but they are not good, not at all. We spend like all those years that we spend in school, in high school, and learn the verb to be. Yeah, so you don't learn to communicate in English. And then that's why we have only 3% of Brazilians that can speak English. You know, 5% of Brazilians can speak a foreign language, but only 3 can speak English. So it's a very low number of people that can communicate in English, you know? So we met a few people that had Brazilian friends, that had partners from Brazil. And we were like, you know, how that those people are gonna communicate with other Brazilians that don't know English if they don't know Portuguese? And maybe if it's so hard for us Brazilians to learn English, maybe it could help the other way. Maybe it could help foreigners to learn Portuguese. So it will make things easier, you know? That's why Yes Portuguese School was born, thinking about helping people to communicate better in Portuguese. And also enjoy our culture, Brazilian culture, visit Brazil, have confidence while traveling around Brazil, feeling safe, meeting new people. That's why we created school, and that's why you were here with us in the mini course in Brazilian Portuguese. So and then when we created Yes Portuguese, we developed an exclusive method of teaching languages that we applied in ourselves, because we spent a lot of time. We also struggled when we were learning English. We had difficult. It was hard to start speaking the language with confidence. We still make a lot of mistakes. Of course, it's impossible to know everything about a language. There are a lot of vocabulary in English that I don't know. There are many expressions that I don't know. And there are a lot of structures in English that I don't know how to use. But I feel confident in coming here, talking to you in English. And I'm not reading anything right now. I'm just saying what's coming to my mind, you know? So I want you to have that with Portuguese. And how are you gonna have that? applying our exclusive method that I'm gonna tell you all about it right now. I'm gonna tell you now, this is a class that normally our students in module 0, in the beginning of our full program and the Travel to Brazil course, the other program we have, learn everything about our method, okay? So here we go. This is the PDF material that you have. You can download it here below the video, okay? So then you can read that. So I'm gonna start telling you about the method, our method, our exclusive method called the bicycle method. Maybe you are thinking, bicycle method? What does a bicycle have to do with learning a language? Well, I'm gonna explain that to you, okay? So, every adult was once a kid. Am I right? I believe so, right? It's impossible to be born like that. You were a baby once. So everything I'm gonna say here, you probably have experienced already. So when you were a little baby, you couldn't move by yourself. You don't remember that, so I'm not saying remember. No, you don't remember. But you couldn't move by yourself. You needed an adult to carry you everywhere. You don't even were able to lift your neck or roll over without adult help. But then your motor development began. In a month, you were already able to roll over. The next month, you were already able to drag yourself. Suddenly, you were already sitting up by yourself. And then when you last expected, you were already able to stand up. And it didn't take long for you to start taking your first steps. Sometimes holding onto furniture, like that, like a penguin, or the wall, or holding hands with an adult. You needed help. But then one day, you managed to let go and walk alone. Even though at first you still didn't have that much balance, and even if you fell a few times, but you always had someone there to guide you, to catch you when you fall, But you continued, you didn't give up, and then you learned. And then you learned to run, to jump, and one day you got your first bicycle. Yeah, I got my first bicycle when I was 5, I guess. Yeah. It had smaller wheels to support you so you wouldn't fall. I remember my bicycle. It was purple and it has the training wheels in white. Yeah. So you've learned to ride that bicycle with support, right? With the training wheels. But then the day came when you were so confident from practicing so much on the bike with training wheels that then you were able to take it off. And you didn't need any more the training wheels, right? And then you were free, riding confidently and feeling confident about what you were doing. I remember that when my father was teaching me how to ride a bike without the training wheels, he took me to a road that didn't have much cars on that. It was a Sunday morning, I guess. And I remember that my father was running and I was riding the bike and he was like holding the bike, so like giving me some support. And then I was all the time asking, Dad, are you holding me? Are you there? Dad, are you there? Are you holding me? And he was, yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here. Until he said, yes, I'm here, but I was not so sure anymore. And then I look back and I fell. That was a big fall. And I hurt. And it was, I had some scars. I don't remember anymore where I was hurt. But anyway, I remember that without my father's support, I didn't trust myself. I couldn't trust myself because I was riding the bike by myself. My dad said, you were doing that for a long time without, and I was not holding you anymore. You were riding by yourself. But when I doubt myself, I fell. Probably it had happened to you with anything in your life. When we doubt ourselves, we fail. So, that's the same thing with the language learning process. It's very similar. You start out not knowing anything, like the baby that don't know how to move. You feel insecure, you don't know how to say a single word if you want to, but then you start to learn the language and you start to understand a word or two. Suddenly you are understanding sentences and you even start trying to say your first sentence in the language. But your pronunciation still isn't very good. People might not fully understand you and you still don't feel comfortable and confident to communicate by yourself in that new language, as I didn't when I was riding a bike. But after so much adventure, so much exposure, and so much practice, one day the time comes to take the training wheels of your language bike. You then be able to speak Portuguese in this case or any other language with native speakers safely and confidently in a natural way. It will happen. And riding a bike is something that when we learn, we never forget. We say in Brazil, we have a saying in Brazil that says, like, for example, falar português é igual andar de bicicleta. You know, speak Portuguese, learning Portuguese, it's like riding a bike. You never forget. Você nunca esquece. It's something that we never forget. So, in the same way, when you learn Portuguese consistently and effectively, as we'll show you through our method, you will never forget what you've learned. But remember, in the same way that for the bicycle to keep moving without us falling off it, we need to be constantly riding it, pedaling, so that we can learn a language effectively. We need to be constantly practicing. And you need to trust the process and to trust yourself. Don't do like me. I didn't trust myself and then I fell. You need to trust yourself and trust the process. This leads us to the two pillars of our method that we explain in the next topic. So our method, the bicycle method, has two pillars, exposure and execution. And I'm going to explain that. So the bicycle method is based on two pillars, exposure and execution. Again, I'll explain it to you using the baby analogy so that you too will realize that the pros of learning a foreign language should be natural. That's why I'm using the analogy of a baby moving, a baby learning how to speak a language, because the pros of learning a language should be natural, just as we did when we learned our mother tongue. Okay? So remember, when a baby is born, the baby can speak. He spends a lot of time just listening to people talking around him. During this period, the baby is being exposed to his mother tongue. And after a while of exposure, this baby starts to speak his first words until he says his first sentence and he never stops. So this idea makes up one of the pillars of the bicycle method, exposure. There is, to learn to speak a language, you need to expose yourself to it. You need to expose yourself to natural conversations in Portuguese, for example, so that your ear gets used to these new sounds, the way the language is spoken by the natives, the expressions the natives use, the vocabulary, the grammar of the language in real context of use. So this is the first pillar of our method. Now let's take a look at the second one. So the baby who is learning to speak is often surrounded by adults who speak directly to this baby. And then this baby begins to repeat what the adults say, to imitate the adults, to execute the commands given to him, and only then begin to create his own sentences, his own phrases. So following this natural logic, which is natural, in addition to exposing ourselves to audios and real conversation in the language that we are learning, we also need to execute some actions that help us to develop our speech. These are our second pillar, execution. So these two pillars are divided in practice into 8 steps that you must follow to advance in your learning. And since learning a language is something that must be done with consistency and constancy, the bicycle wheel needs to be always turning. So that the wheel of your Portuguese learning keeps turning and you keep evolving in the language. You will always need to apply these steps over and over again. So we'll talk about the steps soon. Okay? So how to apply the bicycle method. This is our wheel, the bicycle wheel of our language learning. And here you can see the 8 steps. We start here in immersion, unveiling, acting, mirroring, digging, cataloging, retaining, and finally living experiment. So the 8 steps I'm going to explain it, then we'll do a practical class after it, okay? So in step 1 that we call immersion, you will hear a dialogue, a conversation without reading the transcript. At least 3 times. We recommend that you do it at least 3 times. But you can listen as many times as you need. The idea is that you become familiar with those sounds and you get immersed in them. In step 2, called unveiling, you hear and read silently the dialogue. With this unveiling task, you will then be able to see the correspondence between the sounds you heard in the audio and the words that you can read. In step 3, that we call acting, you hear the dialogue again, pausing it to read the sentences out loud. In this step, you need to try to imitate as much as possible the intonation and the way of speaking of the characters and the people in the audio. And you don't need to use dialogues, for example. You can use videos. You can use, movies, songs, any kind of thing that you can listen. That's why we call it acting. Next is step 4 that we call mirroring. In this step, you listen again to the audio and you're going to repeat the sentences out loud at the same time. While you're listening to it, you're going to read it like an overlay. In step 5, that we call digging, you will write down the sentences that you have the most difficulty, that you found difficult for you. You can choose these phrases for 3 reasons. Because they have sounds that you need to improve your pronunciation, because they have a vocabulary you don't know yet, because they have some grammatical content that you need to improve. So you go back to the dialogue that you were reading or the thing that we were working with, digging through until you find these phrases. Then you go to step 6, cataloging. And you're going to select among the phrases you wrote down in the previous step, at least 10 of them, to add to your Anki deck. Anki is a space repetition system that help us to catalog and then to memorize new content, new knowledge. And we're going to explain a little bit more about it. In step 7, retaining, you review your sentences daily using Anki. This system helps you retain new content so it doesn't get lost in your memory. And finally, in step 8, that we call living experiment, you perform or simulate interactive tasks based on real-life situations. For example, if in the dialogue we learn to introduce ourselves in Portuguese, you receive the task of introduce yourself in Portuguese to someone, in case you have contact with a Brazilian. If this is not the case, we instruct you to simulate the situation and we evaluate your performance. Alright, so now we go to see in practice how to apply the bicycle method, okay? Okay, so to practice with the bicycle method, we are going to use one dialogue from our book, The 100 Daily Conversations in Brazilian Portuguese. If you already have the book, you will see how to study with it now. If you don't have the book, you will see it's a great opportunity for you maybe to learn from that and get the book later, okay? So, the first thing we do is apply step 1. And then you're going to listen to the audio of the dialogue without reading a transcript. So, to start, I'm just bringing myself here and I'm going to play the audio for you, okay? So, let's get started. Pay attention.
Bom dia.
Bom dia. Em que posso ajudar?
Eu tenho uma reserva para hoje. Quero fazer o check-in, por favor.
Claro. A reserva está no nome de quem?
No meu mesmo. Patrícia Souza Vargas.
Tá bem. A senhora me empresta seu documento de identidade, por favor?
Pode ser meu passaporte?
Pode sim, claro. Só um minuto enquanto eu verifico aqui.
Tá joia.
Prontinho. Tudo certo. A senhora está na suíte 217, no segundo andar.
É a suíte com vista para o mar, certo?
Isso mesmo. Vai ficar mais alguém com a senhora?
Não, só eu mesma.
Tudo bem, então. Aqui está a chave do quarto e as informações sobre Wi-Fi e café da manhã estão nesse folheto.
Ok, muito obrigada. O pagamento eu faço agora ou no checkout?
Pode ser feito no checkout mesmo.
Tudo bem.
Seja bem-vinda e aproveite sua estadia em nosso hotel.
Obrigada.
Okay, so normally we recommend you to listen to it more than one time, more than once. But since this class is already getting too long, we are gonna just demonstrate you how to do it. So you see, applying step 1, listen to the audio, okay? You can listen to it many times as you need. If you have the ebook, you have the audio, so you can do this task over and over again. But if you don't have the ebook, you can just go back, watch this part again, and listen to the conversation one more time. Okay, now next is apply step 2. We're gonna read the transcript while we listen to the audio again, okay? So I'm gonna play this and I will leave it here for you to read.
Bom dia.
Bom dia, em que posso ajudar?
Eu tenho uma reserva para hoje. Quero fazer o check-in, por favor.
Claro, a reserva está no nome de quem?
No meu mesmo. Patrícia Souza Vargas.
Tá bem. A senhora me empresta seu documento de identidade, por favor?
Pode ser meu passaporte?
Pode sim, claro. Só um minuto enquanto eu verifico aqui.
Tá joia.
Prontinho. Tudo certo. A senhora está na suíte 217, no segundo andar.
É a suíte com vista para o mar, certo?
Isso mesmo. Vai ficar mais alguém com a senhora?
Não, só eu mesmo.
Tudo bem, então. Aqui está a chave do quarto e as informações sobre Wi-Fi e café da manhã estão nesse folheto.
Ok, muito obrigada. O pagamento eu faço agora ou no checkout?
Pode ser feito no checkout mesmo.
Tudo bem.
Seja bem-vinda e aproveite sua estadia em nosso hotel.
Obrigada.
Muito bem, very good. Now you're gonna do the same thing again, but now it's the time where we play the audio and we pause the audio in each sentence and repeat. Okay? So instead of playing the audio, I'm gonna do this with you. Okay? So I'm gonna say the sentence very slowly and you're gonna repeat it. Ready? Vamos lá. Bom dia. Your turn. Bom dia. Em que posso ajudar? Eu tenho uma reserva para hoje. Quero fazer o check-in, por favor. Claro, a reserva está no nome de quem? No meu mesmo, Patrícia Souza Vargas. Tá bem. A senhora me empresta seu documento de identidade, por favor? Pode ser meu passaporte? Pode sim, claro. Só um minuto enquanto eu verifico aqui. Tá joia. Prontinho, tudo certo. Correto. A senhora está na suíte 217, no segundo andar. É a suíte com vista para o mar, certo? Isso mesmo. Vai ficar mais alguém com a senhora? Não, só eu mesma. Tudo bem, então. Aqui está a chave do quarto e as informações sobre Wi-Fi e café da manhã estão neste folheto. Ok, muito obrigada. O pagamento eu faço agora ou no checkout? Pode ser feito no checkout mesmo. Tudo bem. Seja bem-vinda e aproveite sua estadia em nosso hotel. Obrigada. Muito bem, very good. Now we have step 4. In step 4, you're gonna listen to the audio and read the conversation again, but you read it at the same time as you listen to it. It's a little bit challenging if you're just starting to learn Portuguese, but you're gonna do it anyway as a challenge for you, okay? So I'm gonna play this here, and we're gonna say, you're gonna listen and repeat, read out loud at the same time. Ready? Vamos lá. Very good. Now we finish the exposure part of our method, and then we come to the part in which we're gonna actually execute some tasks. We already execute some tasks of listening and reading, like listening and pausing, repeating, and anyway. But in this time, you read a transcript of the conversation and you try to find new words, new sentences. You maybe need to translate them to understand them better, and you try your understanding. You will need to find maybe some grammar structures that you need to dig by yourself. In our full program, we do it for our students. We take a dialogue and we translate each sentence, we explain and we pronounce them, each sentence with our students, explaining some pronunciation tips. We show them how some structures work, some grammar topics that are related to the sentences in the dialogue. We actually explain in detail for our students in our full program. If you're studying by yourself, you still can do it. You maybe just take more time doing that by yourself. But the method, the bicycle method, is made for anyone to apply it, in any circumstances. If you can join our full program, our course, and then have our guidance, our content, study with us, it's easier for you because we have everything detailed for you, explained for you. But if you can't join us right now, you still can study with our method, applying it by yourself. So, what are you gonna do in step 5? You're gonna read a transcript in the conversation, and you're gonna try to find the new words for you, the new sentences, things that were difficult for you, as we explained above. Everything that you couldn't understand easily, you're gonna take notes because you need them in step 6. And I've selected a few words for you that I highlight in the text, just maybe they are new for you, like reserva, which means booking, reservation. Empresta, emprestar, it's a verb to lend, with the sound of hand. Emprestar, hand me your passport. Give me your passport, like empresta-me seu passaporte. Lend me your passport. Tá joia means okay, that's okay. Vista pro mar is the ocean view in a hotel. You ask for vista pro mar, you want ocean view. Folheto, it's a flyer where you can read the informations. And estadia means stay or stay in somewhere. Now, step 6, we take the sentences and words that we found in the text and that were difficult for us to understand, to pronounce, to understand the grammar structure, and we add them to Anki. Anki is an app you can use in your desktop, in your computer, online, or you can download an app in your phone. If you use iPhone, it's paid, but if you use an Android, it's not paid. But anyway, I prefer it in the computer. In the computer, it's free of charge. And Anki is a spaced repetition system. And what is that? A spaced repetition system is something that helps our memory to remember things. We have something in ourselves called the forgetting curve in our memory. So we have our short-term memory where we store new information. It will forget things that are not important for us. If our memory realize that a new information is not actually important because we don't use it a lot, we don't see it a lot, we don't review that information a lot, it will discard to save space in our memory. So it will discard automatically. It's like a cleaning of our memory automatically. But then, because our forgetting curve will like take from day one where you learn new information, and it will decreasing until we forget things. But if we review things, our forgetting curve will get shorter. So we're gonna forget, and then when we start to forget, we're gonna review, and then when we start to forget, we're gonna review, and then it's becoming until we transport a new information in our short-term memory to our long-term memory, and then things are retained in our memory, in our brain. So that's when we never forget things about a new language, when we will never forget things, when you remember everything about a language. It's when we do this kind of thing. That's why we say you need to see things over and over again, you need to practice, you need to improve. But we can use a help, like Anki, because we store new information in that app, and then you're going to review that in step 7. Here you find a link for you to find a class about Anki that we recorded in our YouTube channel years ago, so you can click and watch, okay? So then we apply step 7. It means to review the sentence. When you apply step 6, storing information in Anki, cataloging the sentences, we need to review, and you need to review it daily. Every day you need to open your app and review the sentences that it leaves there for you, that it shows there for you. Okay, it has an organization how you're gonna review information. All right, so then we don't know how to do, we don't have how to do that here right now, because you need to catalog the sentence and review. I'm just explaining the method for you. But now we go to step 8. Now you need to do a conversation experiment, a living experiment. And then we're going to pretend that you are the one who is checking in at a hotel in Brazil. And I erased the host, the hóspede sentences from the dialogue we saw above. And you try to say the sentence in that places by yourself. So imagine you are actually at the hotel, and what are you going to say when you get there? What are you going to say when the hotel clerk ask you this, and that you just add your own sentences in each situation. So I have a proposition for you, a challenge for you. If you feel confident of doing that, I don't want you to do anything that you don't feel confident, that you don't feel comfortable. I will ask you to do this task and then record a video and then share that with us in our Instagram, okay? So we can share that by sending your video to us as a message, as a direct message, or you can post on your Instagram and tag at Yes Portuguese, and we will be able to see and give you feedback, and maybe to share that in our Instagram. That would be really cool. Okay, so do this challenge and we're gonna give you feedback, okay? So, but you need to send us that in a way. If you don't feel comfortable of recording a video, you can just record an audio and send to us, that we will listen and give you feedback in as well, okay? So guys, now it's time to talk about what comes next in the mini course in Brazilian Portuguese. This was our first class, and it was long, 40 minutes already. What do you have in the next class? I hope you have enjoyed that. And what do we have in the next classes? The class that we have on March 21st, that is called the current root. We're going to talk about the present tense of some important verbs, and you're going to see vocabulary, nationalities, countries, personal characteristics, professions, idioms, and expressions. And our practical activity will be to create your first sentence in the present tense, to introduce yourself and to introduce others. All right? So it's a great class for you to practice the present tense if you already know it, and to learn about it if you haven't seen that before. Then we have the class that we have on Wednesday, the past paths. So we have an introduction to the simple past in Portuguese, and you're gonna practice vocabulary related to food, meals, drinks, and time expressions. And our practical activity will be to create your first sentence in the past tense to tell something that happened in the past. Okay, so it's a little bit more advanced, but you can do it. With our help and our method, you can do it. Then on Thursday, our class called Future Roads, you will have an introduction to the future tense in Portuguese, and you learn vocabulary related to transports, places, time expressions, sentences, and expressions to use at the airport. And our practical activity will be to create your first sentence in the future, to talk about things that you are going to do, that you want to do in the future. And finally, we have our class called Finish Line. It's the end of the journey of this mini course in Brazilian Portuguese, and we'll give you a study structure to follow and to apply the bicycle method by yourself. And the practical activity will be an invitation for you to join the pre-enrollment group of our class 23 of the Talk to Brazil full program. So if you enjoy by the end of the week everything we showed you here, and you think that you want more and you want our help to actually guide you to this journey of learning a language and using the bicycle method, we want our help to hold you, to be your training wheels until you feel confident of leaving the training wheels back and riding the bike of Portuguese language by yourself, communicating all by yourself. You can join our pre-enrollment group of class 23 of the Talk to Brazil full program, because on Sunday, March 26th, we will open the enrollment for our new class with a super great, amazing deal, great offer that you can miss. All right? So guys, that's it for today. I hope you have enjoyed. I am sorry if the class was too long, but it was informative and I needed to explain to you all about the method and give you a small view of how to apply it, you know? So I hope you are ready now to take the other classes with us and to enjoy this amazing week with Yes Portuguese School. Be very welcome, and I see you tomorrow. Tchau, tchau.